Hey guys, welcome to Surf and Show. I'm Noel Salas, and today's surfboard review is on the Miso by Rusty Surfboards. Now I've got two customs. This is a 5.6 EPS epoxy, and this is a 5.5 and what they're calling E-poly. So it has a polyurethane foam with an epoxy resin. Now I'm 5'9" and 165 pounds, and we got great waves for this episode. This is gonna be fun. Sit back, get your favorite drink, enjoy the show. Now I want to start with the board attributes. And when I first look at the Miso, it looks a bit fishy to me. So let's start with the outline because it's a little bit unique. And what I find is that it has a curvier outline. And when I talk about it being curvy, it's more or less a little bit rounder as opposed to a board that has a straighter outline. In my experience with boards that are a little bit straighter on the outline is they like to get down the line fast and they project well. A curvier outline is going to go top to bottom faster. It wants to do a tighter arcing turn when it has a curvier outline, and that's what I experienced here. Now, because it has a fishy look to it, I always talk about the wide point and where it is on a board, and this is a bit front from center, and that's going to enhance its ability to carve. It's also got more foam up here in the nose area, so the overall wider surface area in the outline is going to create more lift and give me speed. So I talk about a straighter outline being fast down the line. I feel like Rusty's giving this board the speed with the overall width, but giving it that curve to fit the style of surfing I like to do, a little bit more top to bottom. Now, some of the other things that kind of remind me of a fish, and this really happened when I put it in my hand, I would say the rail apex is a little bit lower, similar to a fish, and then it's really about the tail design when I talk about a fish type board. It has that hard wing, the reduction in surface area, so carrying the width to here, then it gives me something to pivot off of, and then reducing it here, pulling in that tail a little bit, gives it that performance. Now, I said it has kind of that fishy vibe. However, it didn't surf like a fish. It surfed with a lot more performance. It got me top to bottom quick, and it really surprised me how good this board went being so short at 5.5 in overhead surf. Now I mentioned the 5.5 E-poly going good in overhead surf, and it actually shocked me. And this is why. It's a shorter package, right? At 5.5, kind of that curvier outline, and having that fishy vibe. My experience a lot with boards that fit that description, when I get going on bigger waves, they're carrying so much speed that it's hard to get that rail to engage. Not the case with the Miso. I really felt like in the overhead surf that as I got to the bottom and set that toe side rail, it engaged and I could push as hard as I want. Now I didn't mention the rocker. So once again, the description of more of a fish type board, this has a low to medium entry rocker, and then I would say it's probably medium exit rocker. But what makes the board give it that kind of hold, and it didn't matter if I was riding the E-poly or the EPS epoxy, is really the bottom contours. So I'm going to start from 2/3 of the way up. It's running a single concave into a double to a pretty aggressive V out the tail. Now I'm going to take my straight edge, and when I start to move back towards the tail, I'm going to use my finger here so you can see there's nothing super aggressive in this single concave. And as I come back in here to about 16, 18 inches up, that's where you're going to start to see that double concave kick in. And right here, my straight edge is starting to rock back and forth, and it's getting more aggressive. Now as I get just in front of the fins, look how much V there is in between the side fins and the quad rears, back by the third fin, and then finally out the tail. And when I talk about a board rolling over and giving me that traction, remember the difference between a concave bottom and a convex bottom. The convex bottom with this V, at higher speed, it actually sits down and it likes to roll over on rail. And that's exactly what I was experiencing. Now coupling the bottom contours with the medium exit rocker, it gave me the traction and the performance that I was shocked by, and I really liked it. Now, I spoke to Rusty. I told him our community loves to hear from the shaper talk about the board design and the attributes. I think you're gonna like this. Check it out.
This is the Miso. Started experimenting with it about a year and a half ago. And I wanted to make, not necessarily, and I didn't want to make a fish, but I didn't want to make a twin fin. So I built something in between. It's got about, a medium width nose. And it's got a lot of template curve on the outline, probably more than most boards. It's got a fairly hard wing, and the template doesn't really break much. It breaks a little bit, but not much. It's got a fairly low entry, light concave that starts here. The concave in the middle is not that deep. It's about maybe 1/8 of an inch at most. And right past the middle, it starts to split. And the depth of the V is almost 1/4 inch. You can see that the V goes down and it comes back up. That's typically called a double barrel V. But what I've done is I've pushed the concave farther out, the deepest point farther out towards the rail, and then kind of give it a hook. And I've been having a lot of success with this double barrel hooked V. Positive, quick. I think I tend to have a little lower apex than most shapers. I just feel like the rail sets quicker, it reacts quicker, and you get more lift. As I've said before, I typically shape a pretty balanced board in terms of thickness distribution, maybe favoring the front a little bit. This one's pretty darn balanced. It's something I try for. And as I was saying before, with a low entry, a fairly full nose, kind of a full outline, it paddles pretty quick, fast. It helps it catch waves easier. But once you're up and riding, it's got a fairly aggressive tail rocker. And that coupled with a double barrel V, the board's, it's got speed, but it's surprisingly loose. And the Miso is probably one of our best sellers right now.
Now I want to talk about the fins I chose. The waves were on fire for well over a week, and I started on the 5.5 E-Poly with a raked thruster template. And for me, what I was looking for is control, to be honest with you. I really feel like a rake template, it'll draw the turns, it'll give me more drive. And usually I'm talking about drive to increase speed. I was actually trying to manage the speed. And using a rake template, from my perspective, will tighten up the board a bit, and it gave me exactly what I was looking for. So whether the waves were overhead or head high, I felt like a thruster set complemented this board real good. And then when it was time to transition from the E-Poly and ride the EPS Epoxy, I started with a quad setup. Now this is a neutral side fin with a pivot quad rear, and this for me is my favorite quad setup, and it's the best of both carving and pivot. And I love a quad for a few different reasons. Most of the time it's about speed, and I like the flow. However, with the waves being head high and bigger, I didn't say let's jump on a quad to see if we could get extra speed. I just wanted to get that flow and really see if it would hold. And I really felt like the quad setup felt good, but what really surprised me is how engaged the board felt in bigger waves. This is the EPS Epoxy, so it's going to have a bit of chatter. It's a little bit more on top of the water, so at high speeds, trying to set in a bottom turn at times, it can be hard on an EPS Epoxy. Not so on this board. And it didn't matter if I was running thruster or quad, the rails engaged and the board performed well. Now, Aaron and I were pretty much done riding the Miso, and we were headed to BSR Surf Resort, and I thought, it'd be kind of fun to take the 5.6 EPS Epoxy, get some waves on it, where I'm putting it more in like that punchy, quick little hollow beach break type wave. And so when I got there, I started with my pivot thruster set. Now, it being 5'6" could be a tad long for what I like for the pool. I really like 5'5" and a little bit shorter, but the pivot template got me into the lip quick. I'll be honest with you, it felt a little tight. So tight that I felt like I was still doing good turns, but I didn't feel like the board had that looseness and that quickness underfoot. Now, I'm not saying that it didn't do that. I'm just telling you that it felt a little tight, and that's when I switched to the Almeric Twins plus trailer. Now, when I switched to that fin, I like the side fins. They're really upright and pivotal, so I had that drive, right? And then that stabilizer is a little bit longer. So not only does it give me the stability, but it gives me something to pivot off of and push off of. And that actually felt loose and responsive, and it felt better than it looked on video. So after riding and looking at both sets, I actually prefer the way the pivot thruster set looks on video, and I actually like the way the twin plus trailer felt underfoot. And that's kind of a weird thing at times. Sometimes a board feels really good underfoot and looks not so good in video, or vice versa, or the boards that just look good and feel good. However, I feel like the Miso is very versatile, not only in its wave range, but you can run pretty much whatever fin setup you like, and you're gonna have a good time. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's surfboard review on the Rusty Miso. I'm calling it a one board quiver, and I highly recommend it for that intermediate all the way to pro level surfers, best in 2 to 6 foot surf. Special shout out thanks to Rusty for the board breakdown and sending these boards in for review. Look, if you like the show, subscribe, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, and give us a thumbs up if you like our content. Until next time, we'll see you in the water. Bye-bye.